Hey, good morning, Teachers on Fire. It's Tim Cavey back with another Teachers on Fire Roundtable where I've been connecting with educators to hear how things are going in their context. I hope you had a great week, and I am honored to feature Chris Butts. Chris, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your context in education?
My current context is at Frank Church High School in Boise, Idaho. It's the alternative school for Boise schools. It's my first year teaching U.S. history and a college prep course basically called AVID. I'm kind of a utility player teacher. I've taught elementary. I co-taught at Frank Church for the last 4 years, and I spent a few years as an instructional coach.
Okay, so you went from instructional coach to back to the classroom?
I did instructional coach, kind of like a statewide level, K-12, and then kind of eased back into the classroom as a co-teacher for 4 years. And then we had a couple of retirements and wanted to go back to self-contained and feel like I'm starting all over again at year 16.
Gotta love that feeling. I've got a little bit of that going on as well. So the big question, Chris, is how are things going? Now, you mentioned high school. Did you say you were with seniors, or which grade level in particular are you working with?
I'm primarily with freshmen,
Okay.
and that has its own set of challenges. When I was co-teaching, I had like a freshman English kind of intervention one part of the day, and then I had a senior intervention English another part of the day. And the differences in behavior and maturity were stark. So with the freshmen, it's a lot of just norm building and community stuff and appropriate interaction, which has been really interesting online because a lot of the students that would normally be the most challenging with just aren't attending at all. So it's really disturbing, but it's also just changed what it would normally be like for me.
Well, and that's where I wanted to go next, is just to hear about how it's going. So is it, just to be clear, is it entirely remote in your context?
Yeah, we're entirely remote at least until mid-October, and I'm happy to report that we're going to do a gradual rollout for face-to-face, prioritizing K2. Because as a former elementary teacher, I'll be totally honest, I was so grateful I wasn't in that context in this what we're going through right now, because it's just a different ball of wax. I have a 15-year-old learning online, and she just faces a lot less of the developmental challenges that a 6-year-old has.
Sure, of course. And we're going to hear in a moment from an elementary teacher. Welcome, Wendy. Look forward to hearing from you. By the way, Chris, I must say, I haven't even acknowledged where you are and what you're doing. That looked very good for the heart, mind, and soul right now.
It is critical to keeping it together on Monday morning.
Absolutely. Well, I want to come back to you, Chris, but I also want to welcome Wendy Turner. Wendy, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Could you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your context?
Sure. Thanks, Tim, for having me. Great to be here. Hi, Chris. So I teach second grade in Wilmington, Delaware, and we're getting ready to kick off. We are starting full remote. So our district actually delayed the start of the school year by 2 weeks to give us some additional professional development around online learning. And it's been really valuable, to be honest. Like, I'm literally going into next week with some new tips and tricks and outlooks around how to engage kids in a remote learning environment and how to make sure that we do the best job that we possibly can. So I feel like I've really had to activate my own growth mindset around the change that's happening right now. And I always want to authentically model SEL ideas for my students. So I plan to talk about this when we come back together and be like, hey guys, I'm so excited to see you. Guess what? I've learned all these new things over the past 2 weeks. We're going to be doing things differently, but we're still going to have an awesome time in second grade this year. And I'm going to commit to you that I'm doing absolutely everything I can to create a great experience.
I love the mention of the growth mindset, Wendy. As you know, and I think this is a time when teachers aren't allowed to say anymore, I'm not a tech person, right? We are all tech people. Love it or hate it, we're in this together. So you're both in a fully remote. I'm in a face-to-face context right now. And Chris, I meant to say, by the way, I teach 8th graders, so right behind you, similar age group, similar maturity. Wendy, I want to come back to you for a moment. Chris was just saying he's so thankful his kids, are not facing that fully remote at those young ages.
Yeah.
Talk about, so to be clear, you've gone through the 2 weeks of training. Have you started, and forgive me if I missed this, but are you going into it this coming week now, or how's that working out?
Yeah, let me explain. So we're
Yeah.
actually starting, the first day of school will be Wednesday, September 16th.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and we started in service on August 24th. So we've been learning for over 2 weeks. We've had extensive training on the Google Suite, like how to be way more involved with Google Slides and Forms, using all these things. We had some great training with Caitlin Tucker over the past 3 days this week. Really, really good. And I always say I'm like stopped cold in my tracks by some really good ideas. I've stopped cold in my tracks so many times this week by these incredible strategies we can use to engage kids. I wanted to shout out my school district, the Brandywine School District, to thank them for all this training and this time too, to make sure that we start this the right way. We had some training on the Triple E framework from Liz Kolb. So just some really good things. And my biggest aha is that, yes, we're fully remote, right? And we have two-hour synchronous sessions all day, okay? So I'm going to be with 7 and 8-year-olds. Wow. We log on at 9:20, lunch is at 11:20, and then we come back on at 1:10. But my biggest takeaway from this week is that does not mean that I'm talking for 2 hours and kids are staring at a screen for 2 hours. Caitlin Tucker provided us with a lot of ideas around, okay, you give like a little mini introduction, maybe you have a 3-minute video on something, and you say, hey kids, now it's your turn. Turn off your video or push your screen down, and you're going to be doing this task on your own, and then we come back. So you're not just going to be sitting and listening. And I've also come up with 3 ways to help my kids engage in conversations online. We're using Zoom to start. We're going to go to a new platform in October, but it's not ready. And I'm going to let my kids know you can participate by unmuting and speaking. You can participate by writing something in a chat box, or you can participate by writing something on your whiteboard and holding it up. So I want to give all these opportunities for students with different modalities, different comfort levels, different, how they're feeling even on a particular day, a way to participate in a meaningful way. And our school, we sent home backpacks with our Chromebooks, our whiteboards, and some supplies. So I'm hoping that flexibility, and again, I'm going to model this, will help all of my students engage in a way that's comfortable for them.
That is amazing. And I'm still just stunned by the fact that you had Caitlin Tucker. She must have been virtual.
She was virtual. So we had online training, like her training course, which is filled with like, here's your to-do, here's a template, go do this. So you're listening and learning, and then you would do something. And then we had 2 keynotes from Caitlin virtually, but it was live virtual. One was to our entire district, and then another one was to the elementary cohort. And then she had a separate keynote for middle school and high school. And they were just so engaging and useful. I'm very grateful for that.
Chris, I want to come back to you and talk about relationships. Wendy is really an SEL expert, and I know she must have a lot of thoughts right now about what that looks like in this space. Chris, what has it been like to build relationships with your freshmen so far?
It's been really interesting because that's the first year that they would start in our building. So a lot of these kids are kids I have never met before in person or seen, whereas like last spring when we were winding up, I knew a lot of these kids, and you were kind of like building on that. Just like a lot of the advice that's been out there, it's priority number 1, because if they don't feel that, if they aren't comfortable asking you for support, it doesn't matter what you put out at them. They're not going to do it. They're not going to take any risks. So we've been using some stuff with the community resilience model. We got social worker and I got trained on that last spring, and I've been blown away. I've been having kids do like self scans of their body and just kind of like monitoring stuff like heart rate, and then reporting out, does that feel pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, and just doing those kind of check-ins really helps with the relationships, because A, I'm showing them I care and I'm willing to take instructional time to do it, and B, it just helps my instruction, because then I know like, hey, this kid didn't sleep last night, like how we can adjust accordingly. So it's been cool. I've been trying really hard to use stuff like Flipgrid or things where there's more verbal interaction for the ones that, like Wendy was saying, just trying all the different modalities that I can. It is a really cool time for like universal design for learning, just to see what sticks, because if, like anything is better than nothing, so why not try something different?
That's a great quote. That's a mic drop line right there. This is a time to see what works. And sometimes it is throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks. Wendy, talk about that from your 2nd grade level. What's that been? Well, again, you're not quite into the trenches yet, and I shouldn't use, as Jennifer Gonzalez reminds me, don't call it the trenches. Right. It's not a battle. Right. But Tell us about some of the tools that you anticipate, let's say, building relationships with those little people.
Yeah, so that's so key. And so we have to figure out how to do that in a virtual environment with children I've never met before. So I plan on using lots of check-in strategies. We had a Meet the Teacher Zoom this week with kids and parents. And I used a couple strategies that I would use in the classroom in that meeting. So I asked the parents to type in the chat box, what's one thing you love about your child? Okay, so we're like thinking about strength-based views of our kids. And they're immediately sharing with me like, oh, that my child likes to play Yahtzee, or my child loves arts and crafts. And I'm silently, filing this information in my brain for next week. And we played Would You Rather. And then I want to give a shout out to Lessons for SEL. It's a great SEL curriculum. And a friend of mine, Dr. Byron McClure, is the one who developed this curriculum. He's got these little mini videos that focus in on SEL strategies and competencies. And at the end, we played a video called 3 Good Things. It asked everyone to bring to the surface 3 good things from the day or from the meeting, so we could focus on ending on a positive note with some joy, because so many things are going wrong in the world right now, or so many things are difficult. We've got to stay focused on what's going right, even if it's something as simple as, I didn't burn the toast this morning and the sun is shining, and Chris, I see you getting your exercise in, whatever it is. And that was another really wonderful way to kind of pull up an SEL strategy around self-awareness. You can always tie back to the Castle 5 competencies. And as I get started this week, each day I'm going to have a theme. So the first day, the theme is going to be welcome and how are you feeling? The next day, we're going to focus on gratitude and mindfulness. The next day, we're going to focus on friendship and kindness. And then as I get into week 2, I'm going to get into a little more complex themes around the brain and growth mindset. Also, strategies for self-regulation. I want the kids to be empowered to identify and utilize what works for them, and then get into social awareness and, racism and all those kinds of things. So we're just going to keep working our way in the first, couple of weeks together through these SEL competencies and strategies to get us up to the point where we're more competent in them.
That is awesome. I feel like I'm going to need to replay that tape and just glean some more ideas from that. Hey, let's talk about teacher wellness. I talked to my colleagues. We just finished week 1 of face-to-face. And, this year, because we are face-to-face, it's going to require more supervision because students have to be in learning groups. They have to be sort of in cohorts that don't intermingle, and all with the intention of limiting any potential spread, right? So it's going to take a lot from teachers, and, our teachers are positive, but I can tell they're already stretched. They're already pressed, and it's going to be a tough year. How are you two feeling, and what are your colleagues saying at this point? I know remote looks a little different. You can teach in your PJs and with a glass of wine beside you, so that's nice. But on the other hand, it's stressful in different ways, right? And we're detached, really, is a big loss. So, Chris, how are you feeling? How are your colleagues feeling right now?
It's like we've been doing some check-in stuff like that, and I think the most common word that comes up is roller coaster. Wow. Because there's these moments where you're connecting with students. Like our biology teacher did this hilarious inquiry experiment where she said she found something in a puddle, and it turns out it was a raisin, and it grossed her kids out, and she sent the video to staff, and we just loved it. And then there's just other moments where you just feel devastated and defeated. Like I just published or co-authored a book, Planning Powerful Instruction, in April, and it's about planning instruction, and I feel like a fraud every day. I mean, I show up and I'm like, I have my history class co-taught with other history teachers in the district, so if they want to jump in and look at it, we can share resources. And then at least once a day I look at it and I go, they must look at this and think this guy is like loony because he doesn't have enough stuff, he doesn't have whatever. So there's those low points, but what we've been doing to kind of help combat that, at least within my building, is trying to find points in the day to come together as a staff and just socialize. We have to show up, we have to be there on contract. We can bring kids in as long as they're supervised and it's safe and stuff. But it's been cool. Like the PE teacher and I kind of have a running invitation for pickleball every Friday during lunch. And we just get people to come out there, and maybe not everybody plays, but it's an excuse for us to come together as a staff and just connect, because it really helps buoy those low points. We have a social worker who's doing yoga once a week after school. So it's been really powerful in some ways how it's transformed our campus, because we've never, during lunchtime, we're we're grinding away in our rooms, we're on supervision, we're whatever, and without students in the building, it's created this new spaces and routines that we're starting to explore and just trying to find ways to make it work for us, I guess.
I love the pickleball, and yeah, it is kind of a weird environment for those schools, and I see a lot of them on my Instagram and Twitter, a lot of schools filled with staff but no students, so a very different kind of environment. By the way, one more round, Chris, if you can stick around with us long enough, I'd love to hear more about that book and your latest projects. But Wendy, what's your wellness like, and what are your colleagues saying? You seem really positive right now.
Well, so it's Saturday. I already exercised this morning. That was good. And so a couple things that I do. I'm grateful for flexibility that I have with my district. We can teach from home or school, so I plan to do like a blend of that to mix it up for myself. Something I did for my own wellness is that I decorated my door. Okay, I put up a sign with all the kids' names and a welcome message because it felt good and normal to me. And I about half unpacked my room because if I'm doing a lesson from there, I want it to look like the school and what it would be in session. And during my Meet Mrs. Turner Zoom the other day, I actually showed the kids pictures of the room with round tables. And I said, I want you to picture yourselves, visualize yourselves sitting at these tables with classmates, having discussions and wrestling with problems and hearing ideas. I said, I want you to invoke this while we're doing our online learning because this is what it would be like. And that helped me. I think it helped bridge the gap between virtual and the actual school environment. I will tell you that my brain is full and tired, okay, after all this learning that I've done. But I feel like we all know that we need to engage in self-care more than ever right now. I check in with a lot of my teachers via text message. My daughter and I do a 5-minute meditation almost every day together because she's had some anxiety. She's 15. So, you've got to do what works for you. My one go-to, and Tim, I've explained this to you before, is I get up before anyone in my whole house and I make a cup of coffee and I sit on the porch or in the living room in silence by myself. And I just kind of like think about the day. And if I ever can't do that, which is rare, I feel like a little jittery the rest of the day. Like it is literally my intention setting, a critical piece of self-care for me. And I will keep that up, of course, and encourage others, encourage my, sometimes I do have teachers that might reach out to me, call, text message. I'm overwhelmed. I'm crying. I'm nervous. I'm like, what can we do? We all support each other as much as we can.
Amazing. Thank you for describing those rituals, Wendy. And yes, we talked about those on the Teachers on Fire podcast. So if you are catching this conversation somewhere in the interwebs, make sure to go back and listen to that one. So final question, and I want to thank you so much again for joining me this morning. Chris, let's go to you. Would you just share with us about maybe your next project or your most recent project? What have you got your sights set on?
So most recent was Planning Powerful Instruction. I co-authored that with Jeff Wilhelm and some other colleagues of mine. It's basically like a mental model for planning instruction, kind of similar to Understanding by Design. The major thing that we use is inquiry, is cognitive apprenticeship. So just that inquiry method, but also really focusing on stuff like community building and that gradual release and a heavy emphasis on authentic experiences for kids in terms of learning and what they produce. And then like the now and the future it's all about resiliency. So we're doing like a staff PLC on Elena Aguilar's Onward Resiliency book, which we started last spring, and we've just been kind of chipping away at it. And we just really feel like teachers need to practice resilience in order to teach it to students. Just like teachers who write do a better job teaching writing, reading, all that stuff. And so that, and then like the community resiliency model is another thing that I want to dig deeper into, and we're bugging our administrator to get us trained on, because we really feel like, all kids are going through a lot of trauma right now, and if like the best instructional practice is to respond to that first, and then academics can be addressed.
Wow, that was another mic drop moment, Chris. And I want to come back final round and get your contact info, because I see, or I'm not seeing your Twitter and Instagram yet. So I'll get that from you in a moment. But Wendy, talk to us. And by the way, we're joined by my friend, another podcaster, Dan Kreiness. So Dan, you're catching the end of this conversation, but would love to hear from you as well. Wendy, I know you're ambitious. You've got something cooking right now. What have you got going on?
So always focused on SEL. I've been an advocate for supporting students impacted by trauma for years. I'm kind of turning my interest and some of my time towards working in the realm of anti-racism and racial justice. Currently, I'm running a book study through the Department of Education with a colleague on white fragility. And I've just been accepted as part of the first cohort of Project Thrive here in Delaware, which is a 9-week immersive experience that is centered around learning how to better interact with communities of colors. And again, that's all in the march towards racial justice. If I look out a little bit further, I've been a teacher for 10 years. This is my 11th year. I didn't become a teacher until I was 40. So hey, everyone out there, you can always change it up. And as I look, towards the next path, I could really see myself eventually getting into teaching at the college level and teacher preparation, because one of the key problems that I see around social emotional learning is that it's not included in preparation programs. So teachers come to us with one classroom management class. They're not equipped to support what students are bringing to the classroom. And then I feel like there's an equity of SEL issue that happens as a result, because teachers have very different levels of curiosity, competence, and confidence around SEL. So you could have one teacher who's crushing it, understands how to integrate it into the classroom experience, and then a few classrooms down the hall, another teacher has no idea how to do that, or maybe even no interest in doing that. So I really feel like getting SEL into teacher prep is important. So that may be a next hill I try to climb up on as I advance through my career in education.
Love your work, Wendy. And man, we've got a lot of great teachers coming from Delaware. So shout out to Delaware. Dan, we're kind of wrapping up here. And by the way, again, Chris, you've been modeling it. Both of you have been modeling it with your wellness rituals this morning already. So hats off to you. I'm a little behind you on that count. But Dan, do you want to say a quick hello and tell us what's up in your world?
Yeah, sorry I missed the beginning of the conversation. Yeah, no I actually just got wrapped up recording myself before this, but I wanted to jump on here and just, I guess, chime in on school reopening. We actually had our first full week back in our, I shouldn't say full week, we had Monday off for Labor Day, but almost full week back with students in a hybrid model. And I don't know if you guys have touched on this already. I don't want to hit the SEL piece or the mindfulness piece and wellness that you guys were just talking about, but I'll just go to more of the management, like Wendy was just saying, and even technology in there as well, is that I know that right now it's frustrating. I've seen it for teachers to be able to, especially if you're in a model like my school is, where you're managing students in person and at home, and the in-person students could still be broken down into like 2 or 3 different groups. It's very, very difficult, and it is managing students in a way that no one has ever had to do before. So it's difficult, and I guess my 2 cents here is, please, teachers, give yourselves grace. Students, give your teachers grace. Parents, give teachers and administrators grace. Everyone is trying to figure it out. I have seen, unfortunately, a lot of complaining, especially on the parent and even student side, about what teachers are or aren't doing. And it's difficult to see that and experience that, because I see how hard people are trying to learn as quickly as they can how to do this. And just one more thing, I think right now, although we don't love to say it, I just got off my recording too, saying that I think for now, teachers do need to spend a lot of time learning different platforms and programs before they can really figure out the purpose behind why they're using them. And that's kind of backwards. Usually you want to start with the why, right? Simon Sinek, the golden circle, start with why. But I don't know if we're there yet. And I think, I just want teachers to understand that's okay. It may take some time still to learn Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, Schoology, Seesaw, whatever your school is learning to manage students and other platforms to be able to engage them through technology, and especially with distance learning. Again, give yourself some grace. We're not there yet, so that's been my biggest advice to the teachers I support in my school. And that's what I just wanted to come here and I guess share at the end of your conversation too.
2 quick things on that, Dan. I keep going back to a great quote I saw on Twitter a couple of weeks ago from Brene Brown. And it was, I find my life goes a lot better when I assume that everyone else is doing their best, right? It takes my focus away from what could or should be to what is. And I think I got that quote basically right. And that is so true. I mean, there is no shortage of things to complain about right now at any level and anywhere you look. life is not as we want it to be, especially in education. And one more thing, Dan, too, on teacher overwhelm. So I'm in a face-to-face context. I know some schools are there. And one of the things as a new AP that we're encouraging our teachers to do is to try to post and share as many asynchronous pieces of content on Google Classroom we have a few remote learners. So out of my class of 25, I've got 4 or 5 who will be staying at home. Maybe their families have elderly relatives at home or whatever. And so teachers have sort of looked at me and looked at our principal with this alarmed look, like, how much time do you want me to be making videos, at the end of these exhausting days? And how much time? And it's just baby steps. It's just like whatever you can manage, do it. And if you have the emotional bandwidth to make a video of your direct instruction, do it. And if not, that's okay. So, like you've both been saying, it really is about grace. Having a lot of grace for everyone right now, I think, is what it comes down to. Let's do a quick go round, and I guess last word and/or would love to connect with you. So Wendy, I don't think you're on Instagram, right? But tell us about how we can reach you on Twitter.
Yeah, so I just joined, and then I told my kids, I don't know how it works, and they laughed in my face because they're teenagers. And I'm all about Twitter and Facebook, actually, but I'm an old person, so that's why. So please find me on Twitter at Mrs. Wendy M. Turner. You can tag me, you can message me. I always reply back to people. I'm engaged with educators around the world, really. And on Facebook, I have a teacher page. It's Wendy Turner, 2017 Delaware Teacher of the Year, and I share. It's at Mrs. Wendy M. Turner. Sorry. Sorry, Tim, not bad. Mrs. Wendy M. Turner. It's impossibly long. I don't know why I put my middle initial in there, but it's there and I can't change it. And find me on Facebook at Wendy Turner, 2017 Delaware Teacher of the Year, and I will absolutely get back to you. And I share ideas and materials all the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wendy. And Chris, I shared your Twitter earlier. Is there anywhere else that people can reach out and find you and get in touch with, of course, your book and your other work?
That the book you can find, on Amazon or on Corwin. I want to say Corwin has the best deal on it lately. They had like a whole anniversary sale related to it. Planning Powerful Instruction is the main part of the title to Google, and they have a 2.5 and a 6.12 edition I co-authored on the 2nd through 5th grade. CButts9980 on Twitter is the main way to get a hold of me. My Instagram is largely pictures of this dude. Never did the Facebook thing when I found out teachers were getting fired for dressing up as sexy pirate.
Oh boy. Well, hey, that's a whole other conversation. But Chris, I did not expect to hear Canada Geese when I got on the call with you this morning. But thank you for bringing some nature into this session.
Oh,
I love it.
There's too many in Boise, Tim. You're welcome to as many as you want.
Dan, thank you for chatting with us briefly. How can people reach out and connect with you? And of course, the Leader of Learning podcast.
Well, that's where I'll start. I'd appreciate it if you went and checked out and listened to the Leader of Learning podcast. Our next monthly series episode called Devil's Advocate with my co-host, Rochelle Danae Poth will be published in a couple of days. Just recorded that this morning. Talking about a lot of educational technology type things is our next episode. And I'm pretty much everywhere on social at Dr._Kreiness, KREINESS.
Hey, Wendy, Dan, Chris, I so appreciate you. Thank you so much for sharing a few minutes with Teachers on Fire, the Roundtable edition this morning. Have an amazing weekend. Take care, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Guys, nice to meet you both.
Nice meeting you too.